NFTs. One day I hope I can stop making videos like this, but I fear that is going to be in the distant future because companies insist on trying to normalize this crap that doesn't really add anything to the gaming landscape, only makes companies more money, only allows them to add an extra layer of monetization. We have seen Ubisoft implement Quartz, Stalker 2 tried but failed, Peter Molyneux's Legacy selling NFT land, Square Enix with their crappy Happy New Year 2022 message saying, we're gonna do NFTs, guys. And Happy New Year, by the way. Konami, Castlevania 35th Anniversary NFTs, Atari Lootbox NFTs for 50th Anniversary, Team 17 NFTs, which ended in failure. Troy Baker tried NFTs, that didn't pan out. EA kind of backpedaled when it comes to the stance that NFTs are the future. Steam banned NFTs recently. Formula One, there was a blockchain game surrounding that shut down. Axie Infinity recently had $620 million worth of crypto and whatnot stolen, which further highlights just how rife with crime and scams and theft the NFT landscape is. And finally, we have SEGA, which is the topic of today's video. Recall that at one point back in January of 2022, people were fearful of the future because SEGA trademarked SEGA NFT, which clearly indicated that they had plans to kind of follow along this gold rush, to get on board the hype train, you name it. And it raised enough concerns that people started speaking out, and obviously SEGA were eventually asked questions about potential NFT endeavors. And this is what Video Games Chronicle reported on January 8th, 2022. SEGA says it'll ditch NFTs if it's perceived as a simple money-making scheme. So it seemed like they were boarding the hype train, saw just the kind of buzz surrounding it, the negative buzz that generates bad PR, and they said, okay, we're going to backpedal for a bit and we're going to say if it's just money making, we're not going to do it. And I was skeptical about taking them at their word for it. These are corporate executives who are talking about any opportunity to make additional profit for their company and make it look good in the eyes of investors, they'll absolutely take. And yeah, to no surprise, SEGA is now changing their tune again, this time expressing that there is a future for NFTs in video games, but that just has proven to be something that hasn't really panned out or something that hasn't really been explained even. So let's look at this story from May 13th, 2021, when SEGA said they have plans to release a super game within the next 5 years, which does tie into today's NFT-related story. This super game back then was rumored to be a single game involving a 5-year strategy called creation of super game, which SEGA suggests will start off with low profitability because it's a new IP, but has high growth potential because it'll be sold globally. Now, this term super games, it sounds like kind of like what Microsoft tried to do by labeling the initiative as a quadruple studio acquisition for Microsoft. Scrolling down here, you'll find VentureBeat's coverage of this, noting that Microsoft describes the initiative as its quadruple A studio. What is a quadruple A studio? Well, it's a weird term, but I get what the company means. The initiative is going to make big, expensive games, and they're so big and so expensive that their scope may reach beyond the blockbusters we have had up to this point. The proof will be in the pudding. Maybe when they reveal whatever this quadruple A project is, we'll see something so grand and vast and so far above the triple A blockbusters that we'll be able to label that quadruple A. But to me, this just sounds like a buzzword for a triple A game that just happens to be bigger and more expensive. It's just triple A given a new name, kind of like how some of game companies' NFT endeavors are basically renamed auction houses with a new buzzword attached to it. Super game just sounds like it's that kind of buzzword where it doesn't really ultimately mean anything. And to top it off, this whole super game thing, which they vaguely described back then, has been clarified further via the latest report from Video Games Chronicle from April 9th, 2022. And this is where NFTs come in. SEGA says its super game plan is actually multiple games, not one giant game, and may use NFTs. So why describe it as a super game if it's just multiple game releases? Isn't that just games? Like, how does that differ from how we're already releasing games? How does a super game differ from a regular game. It's not something that they explain too thoroughly, but the article does report that it was claimed in November that it would consider investing up to 100 billion yen, which would be a substantial investment if it were for one game. But if we're talking about over the course of like a couple games, then 882 million split across those games, the budget would be in line with kind of your AAA budget. 100 billion yen, by the way, translates to roughly $882 million, so almost $1 billion over the next 5 years to achieve its super game ambitions. A new internal interview has clarified that it refers to a description Sega is giving to a number of high-budget games it has planned. In an interview on Sega Japan's recruitment website translated by VGC executive VP Shuji Utsumi explained that we have defined Super Game as the development of AAA titles that cross over Sega's comprehensive range of technologies, and will aim to achieve this in our 5-year plan. So from what I can tell here, the Super Game endeavor just seems to be AAA Sega games that happen to have a bit more ambition and scope in terms of its scale and I guess its budget, but it just sounds like a game or a couple of games. Now, Sega does present an interesting idea about how I think there is great potential in the relationship between people who play and watch games who are thinking of creating new entertainment with these possibilities. Maybe a way for, a streamer to be playing a game and the audience to watch along and, somehow contribute to the interactive nature of this game session, though. Doesn't Twitch already kind of have that with certain Twitch integrations? I guess maybe this would be something more built into the game. Is that what they're trying to say here? Am I understanding this correctly? I mean, that's a potentially cool idea, but that doesn't, if that's all they have going for this, I don't know how that justifies the Super Game label when it's just a AAA video game, which has this neat feature of, player versus audience interaction. Sega then noted how you can imagine that the scale of game development will be that of a global blockbuster. I mean, in that case, there are plenty of other games out there we should be calling super games, which have really high budget and are global blockbusters. Again, what's so different about super games? Well, I think maybe that becomes more apparent when you look at their goal to implement NFTs. The Super Game project could also incorporate cloud technology and NFTs, states Video Games Chronicle, based on what Sega producer Masayoshi Kikuchi said and explained during that interview. He said, gaming has a history of expansion through the connection of various cultures and technologies. For example, social networking and game video viewing are recent examples, except those are actually positive elements. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of negative aspects to social media and social networking and whatnot, but generally this interconnectedness and openness in communication has allowed the video game industry to boom. Messages can spread faster, people can entertain through those video games via content online and whatnot. There is just a lot of merit to how social networking has impacted gaming. Don't get me wrong, there's some negative ways that's been impacted, but certainly a lot of benefits that's come with that. And then the statement continues, it is a natural extension for the future of gaming that it will expand to involve new areas such as cloud gaming and NFT. Cloud gaming, I will give it to them as long as it's an alternative to local hardware gaming rather than trying to compete against local hardware gaming and essentially kill off local hardware gaming, which is never going to happen. Google Stadia is prime example of people just not being interested in a cloud-only environment. They want the option of both, which is what Xbox offers with Game Pass and why that service has proven to be so successful. So if Sega wants to bring games to the cloud, as long as they're still bringing them in physical and digital formats that allow you to play locally, hell, cloud gaming can be beneficial, especially for those who don't have the hardware but have certain devices with a screen on them where they can play these high budget games on. That's great. Now, NFTs, that's where we draw the line. The statement continues, we are also developing Super Game from the perspective of how far different games can be connected to each other, which to me gives me the vibe of them trying to create some kind of metaverse, or at least release multiple games that are, I guess, connected enough that if you buy NFTs for one, they can be transferred to other games. Maybe that's the plan, and that's what the whole Super Game nomenclature is all about. But you don't need NFTs to implement such a feature. You could do that without NFTs. So implementing NFTs is, again, just taking advantage of the hype surrounding it, the gold rush surrounding it, the fact that it's a buzzword that gets people talking. Except with NFTs, you have blockchain technology to serve as a digital ledger to keep track of all that stuff. But there's plenty of account-based, technology and software that allows you to transfer game assets between games if those games are developed with that in mind, because you can't just take an NFT from Ubisoft Quartz and then, take it over to, I don't know, Legend of Zelda and then suddenly have the helmet that you purchase or whatever. Like, it doesn't work that way. Nintendo would have to program the game to support the NFT's asset, the thing that the NFT is pointing to, and then actually make the in-game asset for the helmet. And then, it's this whole process. So it would seem as though SEGA here is planning for a SEGA-centric kind of multi-connected, multi-games endeavor that may also have metaverse endeavors and goals associated with it, combined with NFTs to give the illusion of ownership of in-game assets. I don't know. It's all just such overcomplicated BS that still has no true explanation for it. At no point here does SEGA explain how NFTs will positively impact this whole super game idea, or just gaming in general, how NFTs will open new avenues for their upcoming projects. They don't explain anything because it just seems like they don't really have an explanation. That's been the case for every single company. Give me one good reason that NFTs should be normalized. You ask them that, I guarantee you companies can't actually come up with a good reason. And whatever explanation they do come up with, it usually tends to be, well, here's this feature that you can do with NFTs. And the retort is, well, you can do that without NFTs. So what is the unique value of NFTs aside from another way for companies to try to entice players to spend money on games so companies can rake in revenue to please investors? As for what the community response has been to all of this, well, disappointment, really, universally so. Here we have a comment posted on the Video Games Chronicle article that reads, I mean, sure, SEGA struggles heavily to produce even one good normal game in its flagship Sonic franchise, but I certainly trust them to make a good super game that actually involves making multiple good non-super game and incorporates NFTs in a way that won't enrage gamers. There must be something in the water over there at SEGA HQ. The confidence surrounding SEGA right now is not at the highest when it comes to their internally developed game releases. And then them adding a layer of NFTs on top of all of that, suggesting that that's coming down the line, and them expressing it's the future, it's only going to diminish confidence in SEGA as a company further, which is why people are saying stuff like, all this is just super dumb and will dissolve like a fart in the wind. SEGA is a joke. Are they high? Kotaku's article has plenty of fans who are kind of poking fun or dissing SEGA for this. Here's one of the top comments. Yeah, I support NFTs. No, I effing don't. Here's somebody else. Nope, pass on NFTs in crypto and gaming. It's monetized enough. Need to go back to the days we pay for a game once and that's it. No DLC, patches, cash shops, microtransactions, etc. Battle passes, the different editions for games. You name it. There's so many monetization avenues right now and these companies still freaking want more. I think someone at SEGA corporate is dreaming there and casting some pretty outlandish ideas. Here's somebody else highlighting how NFTs really bring nothing new to the table. I don't understand this industry's hard on for NFTs to become a thing. I mean, in a way, they have been in the same racket for years with players lining up to hand over real money for non-tangibles like skins, weapons, mounts, or whatever, which are just zeros and ones. Making the exact same thing but with the blockchain involved seems needlessly complex and environmentally wasteful. Needlessly complex is already what microtransactions are, the different layers of currencies and all of these different elements that you have to engage with before you can purchase the loot box or the microtransaction. And then from there, the game still tries to screw you at every turn by lowering the odds or by increasing the grind, you name it. It is needlessly complex and needlessly compromising the integrity of these games, but it's all done for the sake of psychological manipulation. That's what the complexity is about, manipulating players and goading them into spending that money so that they can alleviate frustrations surrounding intentionally introduced issues that you resolve by paying money. And then NFTs has a layer of being environmentally wasteful while adding nothing new or essential to the table, to gaming, to just the landscape as a whole. So SEGA coming out here saying before, we're not going to do anything that feels like it's all about earning money, and then them coming out saying, well, we're making this whole super game thing, we're going to throw this buzzword out there, and then also, by the way, NFTs are totally the future. Pretty contradictory and not entirely unexpected. I guess time will tell how these NFTs are actually implemented. Maybe they have some grand idea that's different from how other companies have been doing it already, but I can almost guarantee you that's not going to be the case. I'd love to be surprised, but these companies seldom tend to surprise when it comes to how they show off their greed. That, ladies and gentlemen, is one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on everything, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.